Hey guys, it's me, EODGamer here, and we're back with another team composition video, and today we have the first character banner in Honkai style, which is going to be Zila's limited banner, and I'm sure you guys want to know what kind of teams would be really good for her, and we're going to be talking all the way from like free to play, totally no gacha, all the way to a whale team as well. So if you guys want to plan like what limited characters to get going ahead and some things to consider, this video is definitely for you. You know, we don't waste time on this channel, so let's go ahead and jump first with a totally free to play team in terms of no gacha whatsoever. And I do think that in terms of Seele's synergetic character that you can go for will be a character like Asta. In terms of Asta, she provides attack buffs and she provides speed buff, both of which Zila really needs. She offers good fire break damage as well, which is more on the flexibility factor for this team comp. So good damage, good flexibility, strongly recommend Asta. There are two options that you can go for the third slot, and that is really Fire MC or Natasha. Now the benefit of going with Fire MC over Natasha is you get a bit more synergy with in terms of Asta, because Asta adds fire damage to team members as well. Natasha doesn't really offer that much physical break damage anyway, so doubling down on a synergetic element might be pretty useful as well. On top of that, the difference between healing and shielding is very important, and if let's say you have a squishy main DPS like Zila with let's say 1k HP, right, and the opponent gives like a 1k AoE damage, no matter how Zila is going to get one-shotted, no matter how much healing that Natasha provides. For example, that's where a shield comes in handy, is because no matter if you add in like a 50 hit shield or 100 shield, you will be able to at least survive that one shot, and that makes a pretty big difference between the two of them, especially when you have a squishy main DPS like Zila. So some things to consider, but I think overall these two characters will work really well regardless of what you choose in that sense. You could even go both if you really wanted to like that, but I do think it's a bit of an overkill for sustain as well. And the last slot that you have over here will be a gap filler in terms of the ability to, for example, proc AoE damage, because that's what this team doesn't really have a lot of right now. Sure, you have Fire MC and Asta, which offers a little bit of AoE, but not still a lot. My recommendation in terms of the characters that you could put, of course you can put Serval, you can put Tingche and Herta. All of them are all free characters so far, but my recommendation for you will be the lowest recommendation will be Herta, and the reason for that is because Zila and Herta effectively eat off small monsters. The more small mobs there are on the field, Herta actually benefits because she procs her passive more often when they are at low HP, and often she cleans up a lot of these weak mobs. Zila wants to actually like destroy and be the ones eliminating the small mobs to get her action to go again, as well as getting that damage buff passive for herself when she eliminates a target. That is why out of the 3 AoE DPSs in terms of the 4-star category, I think Herta is the lowest priority. The other two, Tingche can be gotten after you clear certain stages in, was it the Forgotten Hall or Simulation Room? I can't really remember exactly, but once you complete either one of those to a certain extent, you'll be getting Tingche as well. But the downside of Tingche is you actually are playing a double quantum, and if you go this, you are playing like effectively double quantum, double fire, which might not be able to have the flexibility to take on all of the comps. But later I'll talk about a quantum team that makes quite a lot of sense, especially you scale into a whale endgame. So if you're planning to go whale endgame, this one will take higher priority, but if not, Tingche is like kind of the middle of the tree. And in terms of slot 4 and totally SR units, I will prefer Serval here as well. Serval offers a very good amounts of short AoE damage to get all the small mobs to at a lower life to be able so that Zila can actually go and one-shot them and act again. So out of these 3, Serval, my highest choice. But now let's talk a bit, what if you can add in like some gacha characters into the mix, and maybe you got lucky in terms of some of your pools of good 4-star characters. And the one character that I have in mind, or 2 characters that I'm going to add in, is definitely going to be Tingyun in this slot right here, as well as Sampo. And let's first talk about Sampo. Not many people talk about him because not many people really understand his kit. He basically is a damage over time wind shear type of unit that excels even in like multiple AoE type enemies, and he works really well filling the gaps with Seele because he does really good amounts of damage over time, AoE damage as well. So in that sense, I would choose either Sampo or Serval if you are planning to run this team comp as well. Ting Yun is really strong, and Ting Yun gives, although she doesn't give a lot of speed buffs, but because of Zila's very high base speed and the flat bonuses that Esta provides, Esta doesn't really care how fast your main DPS is going, as she gives a flat amount of speed, whereas Ting Yun really taps on the high amounts of damage that Zila can do as well. And also, not to mention, Serval has the best in class 4-star stat line as well. So definitely either of these two options work really well with Serval, and that's something that you want to consider as well. So the free-to-play team in terms of one 5-star character and the rest of them are 4-star or free main character, this is what the decision choice will be like. So, but of course, now as some of you might know that once you get 40 pulls, you are guaranteed a standard banner character. Let's talk about all the standard banner 5 stars real quick, and it's still relatively free to play, I would say, because as long as you just reach level 35 in terms of your Trailblaze level, you will be able to get one 5-star standard banner for free. You just don't know which one it is yet. And of course, the best case scenario will be to pull Bronya. Everyone knows how strong this combination is of Bronya as well as Zila, and definitely an insane combination, because Bronya allows Zila to do that one-shot potential as well. But what not many people are considering, that actually when you have Bronya here, Esta and Ting Yun are going to be taken out of the equation, and you can go for more damaging options. In this sense, if you have Bronya, I actually won't really like Natasha, and the reason is because Bronya doesn't really do that much windbreak damage, and if you have another character here that doesn't really do that much breaking in terms of enemy weaknesses, you will start to feel that your flexibility is really lacking, and you can only really tackle Quantum or your 4th slot weakness category. So I would take Natasha out in this sense and run Fire MC, who offers much better sustain as well as fire break damage in an AoE as well. So some things to consider in that sense. And the slot 4 in this category, I would be looking for more of a damage dealer who can scale off with crit damage. And in that sense, I would definitely favor Serval still as the top pick in terms of this team composition as well. So I do think that this team is probably going to be one of the more well-played teams, especially people who are planning to reroll their accounts. I'll be doing a reroll guide in future as well to talk about Zila, Bronya, and how you can get them and in the least amount of time if you're looking for this optimal composition. I'll do a Ting Yun guide as well slightly later. But now let's go on and talk a bit more about the other standard banner characters. I think the worst standard banner character to get if you are planning to play Zila is definitely Yanqing. They are in competing roles, and they are both single target with very similar style in general. But if you really must play these two characters, or you were lucky or unlucky to get these two characters at the same time, I'll be putting him in your last slot right here, and I will change Bronya out because you don't have Bronya. I'll change it to Esta. Esta offers speed buff to the whole party and attack buff to the whole party, whereas these two are more single target buffers for hyper carries in nature. So here you split up your DPSs to Yanqing as well as Zila, but it is what it is. We can't fight with Gacha luck. But in that sense, there might be better alternatives in terms of not maybe investing in one of them and investing in them later on and building up your team roster first. So those are my thoughts in that case. And the other character that I think is really strong in terms of like the best case scenario other than Bronya is actually Himiko. Himiko is a solid character to put in your erudition slot, because then you won't need to play a 4-star erudition character, which are actually not super strong with Zila, since now they're really super synergized. In this sense, running a triple fire team like this together with Zila makes a lot of sense. Although you only have like 2 elements to break, still very decent enough to have 2 element breaking. You could always like flip around your Memory of Chaos teams depending on what is weak to Quantum or Fire. And Esta here buffs the attack of everyone, which everyone requires, the speed of everyone, and also giving fire damage bonus to the 3 of them. Very, very strong synergy I see here. As well as Himiko does very strong AoE damage to complement Zila as well. Fire MC here offers the defensive position. Now other characters I think are really strong will be Bailu. Bailu offers the defensive ability, and if you have Bailu in this case, you won't really need to run Fire MC because she has a revive inbuilt into a kit. Of course, your erudition characters, so I'm just going to put one so it's more convenient for me to just drag. But if you have this character here, in slot 3 in your sustain, you don't really need Fire MC, and you can run a team like this, will work pretty well as well. Of course, Esta can be easily swapped out for Ting Yun depending on what you prefer, and any AoE DPS that we see here could work quite well as well. So that is for a character, for example, like Bailu in this slot. So now let's talk real quick about the next character, who's also a standard. There are two more standard characters, and we're going to talk about Gepard. So since I don't really have to change much in terms of the layout, Gepard is going to also be taking a defensive role in this team. He offers a best-in-class shielding slot, but in terms of the differential between him as well as Fire MC, I don't think it's very significant in terms of the differences they provide. He does offer Ice, which contrasts a bit to, for example, if you're running S-Star already and you have good amounts of Fire Break, you might want to diversify into Ice. But other than that, I don't think this is going to be like the top Zila teams in terms of what people will be playing and the meta teams and stuff like that. But still, not too bad. He can be swapped out later on to another team in the Memory of Chaos as well. And finally, the last character on this list will be definitely, in terms of standard character, will be, before we move on to the whale team, will be Clara. And Clara is going to take a similar slot to, for example, Fire MC or even Gap Filler. I would say I'll put Clara in the Gap Fill slot, and let's remove these erudition characters real quick. So in this case, if you get a character like Clara, you can actually run, instead of you could run Fire MC here, or you could also run Natasha. What Clara offers is more AoE damage and counter ability and drawing aggro to herself. In this case, if you have two aggro drawers, I don't know the exact mechanics, but the net result will definitely be Zila will get less of attention, and the only weakness that she will have then is AoE damage, which either one of these two will settle AoE damage, because if Clara is taking most of the damage, she offers good counter on the team and benefits very strongly from speed buffs and attack buffs from S-Star, or the attack buffs and energy restoration buffs from Tingyun. And she also has a really good stat line as well. So very strong. I think this team probably is going to be an underrated team, Clara and Zila. It's not going to be... It scales later on into the late game as well. I'll talk a bit right after this. But I do think that in terms of the order of priority, Bronya is going to be first if you are playing Zila. And I would say Himiko as well as Clara will be tied for second in terms of performance in the team comp, because they both of them fulfill the AoE requirement that Zila really lacks, and those are some things that you are considering if you are planning to pull Zila. And real quick, I'm adding this in towards the end of like my filming, and Well is also another strong character that I think will be second in priority together with Himiko as well as Clara. And the reason why I think he's really strong is actually, if you look at this team right here, you have a speed up, you have a speed down, and what this means is this is going to be very effective because the differential between speed of the enemy versus your own speed is going to be very great. And as you guys know, Zila already moves very fast with a 115 base speed, the highest in the game, incredibly fast, and this just makes her strengths even stronger as well. So if you play this team, I think it's going to be quite underrated in terms of people are not messing around with turn order. This is going to be probably the fastest moving speed team in the game. Of course, slot 3 can change slightly, but definitely really strong as well. Because when you speed buff your whole team, means everyone is moving quicker, everyone effectively gets more energy restoration, and they all can use their ultimate quicker, so Well is able to apply the speed down more on the enemies. And really strong team, and I think this team might eventually edge out over a Bronya focused team, because Bronya is more like bumping up Zila, who's already very fast on her own, whereas Well offers bumping up everyone in terms of the effective speed differential. This will be the best team for Zila, especially if you're just looking for like a semi-free to play where one standard and one limited character, but very late game because you need the gear coming from multiple characters as well. Bronya is going to be cheaper in the early game because you just need to gear one character. But now let's talk about the fun part, and let's say you have tons of cash and you also want to throw it around. What kind of team will I make for Zila? Now let's take a look at the whale team. Alright, so let's say you are playing the game for a little bit of a time already, and now you have Zila as well as Silver Wolf's banner on, and I do highly recommend pulling for Silver Wolf. With a double quantum, you actually are able to make use of Silver Wolf's passive or ability much better, which drops a weakness into the enemy. And at this point, of course, you want to make her drop quantum more regularly than not. So the ideal is actually to either run a mono or a duo element team. Let's talk about duo first, because that is slightly cheaper, right? So we're going to put in a character, for example, like Asta in this third slot, as well as Fire MC in the fourth slot. Not a lot of AoE damage, but in terms of the ability to drop quantum weakness break, you'll be breaking enemies very often, as you have both quantum damage, the weakness, and you have fire damage. Very strong. Sustain, you have damage buffing, you have debuffing, and you also have single. Very good if you are fighting just like one boss. This is going to be a very lethal team to run around. and I would recommend this especially if you're planning to play for the long haul and you like both of these characters. I do think they're very, very strong together as well. Now, a better team in terms of duo element is actually going to be physical other than fire. Many people are going to be thinking about this team because Esta is so broken, but what is actually going to be slightly better, I would say, is physical. But before we get into physical and talk about the exciting thing, let's talk about another viable one, which is going to be lightning. So if you have a lightning team, for example, you have Bailu here, you can easily run another lightning character. Maybe you are playing a Kafka, for example, in this slot. This way, if you are playing this team composition, you will have good amounts of quantum damage, you have good amount of AoE damage and sustain from Bailu as well. A very, very expensive team to build, but of course this is a whale team, that's why I highlighted it here. Very strong team. I do think this is very well balanced as well. Going to be better than fire but it's of course much more expensive. And the team that I'm actually thinking about that is going to be the best for a dual element team will be a physical team. Why? Is because firstly it's cheaper, it's not going to be as expensive, and you also have a much more well-balanced kit. Now let's talk about that real quick. So the main downside of Zila and Silverwolf is their weakness to AoE. Clara fulfills that and yet offering defensive ability by drawing aggro away from two squishy characters and also adding damage reduction for herself. Her counter is very, very high in damage and benefits very strongly as well. Adding in this in post-production, but one of the additional benefits to this team is that your wastage in terms of gear will be very low, because not only your effectiveness, your physical, your quantum, or your speed gear, your attack boots, and stuff like that, HP gear, cannot be used by all of these characters who really skill off different things. Very little wastage, very efficient as well. Alright, so now let's go into the little bit more expensive team. You have the duo elements, and now you want to go into the mono elements, which I think is really what makes Zila stand out in terms of her attractiveness for most players who are planning to like reroll and pull for her. And what I mean by a mono team in this case will definitely be, let's move these guys aside and putting Qingque here. So as we mentioned at the start of this video when we were talking about the free-to-play characters, Qingque offers good AoE damage in her kit, being an AoE damage oriented character in nature, and what she offers is also quantum element. When you have triple quantum, the last slot here is supposed to be the anticipated Fu Xuan who's going to come out. Some are speculating that Fu Xuan is going to be a preservation class of quantum element, and in that case, he offers the defensive ability as well as a completion to the full quantum team. Of course, if she's not quantum in the future, there's going to be another quantum character out there and you're looking for a defensive quantum unit to fill up this team. What this means is Silverwolf is guaranteed to drop quantum weakness in the enemy, which means these 4 characters will be able to tackle any content because everything will be then weak to quantum and you can break them very, very easily. And not only that, it also gears very well with this set here, which actually is for quantum characters, and basically it's basically a defense arrest threat if the enemy is weak to quantum, and Silverwolf forces that criteria in, which means you will always have quantum damage bonus, defense threat, and applicable to every single situation. Pretty nuts if you ask me. Very, very strong team to consider as well. And well, if you like such content, do check out these 2 other videos right here where we go more into more details of, for example, in Jingyuan's kit or tier lists and other team compositions as well. Thank you so much for watching and see you in the next video.